What's happening in Turkey right now has residents of this country on edge, along with all of Europe. Right now, as you watch this video, the Earth beneath one of the most densely populated regions on the planet is literally tearing apart. And we're not talking about some minor tremors that can be dismissed as nature's whims. Recently, an earthquake with a magnitude of 6.1 struck northwestern Turkey. The earthquake's epicenter was in the city of Sindirci, in Balıkesir province. The depth was approximately 10 kilometers. It would seem like nothing unusual for a region where the ground shakes regularly. But then something began that made scientists seriously worried. The tremors repeated twice, with intensities of 4.6 and 4.8. And this is just the beginning. Within only 13 hours, specialists recorded 330 aftershocks. The Earth simply cannot calm down. People felt the tremors hundreds of kilometers from the epicenter, in Istanbul, in Bursa, Izmir, and other major cities. Millions of people felt the ground moving beneath their feet. 3 buildings completely collapsed. Several dozen structures throughout the province sustained serious damage. Many houses developed deep cracks, as if a giant invisible claw had scratched them from top to bottom. But here's what's really frightening. This isn't a random tremor. Scientists have been observing constant seismic activity in the region for several months now. The first powerful earthquake, with a magnitude of around 6, occurred back on August 10th. And since then, the Earth hasn't stopped shaking. The founder of the local earthquake research center studied the data and released information that's deeply unsettling. Over the recent period, scientists have registered 12,000 underground tremors in the region, and this number continues to grow every day. He compared the current activity with the Aegean Sea earthquake earlier this year, but back then, everything ended relatively quickly. Here, however, the process drags on, and that's an alarming sign. And now here's the most interesting part. Why did this particular territory turn into the epicenter of constant underground tremors? What catastrophic event are scientists expecting in the near future? Why is the scientist who predicted the Turkish earthquake of 2023 now warning Europe? How could one fault line in Turkey trigger an energy crisis throughout the entire European Union? Let's start with the fact that the northwestern Turkish province of Balıkesir, where scientists recorded the latest fairly large tremors, is located in a unique and extremely dangerous place. Right beneath it, the African and Anatolian tectonic plates collide. The Anatolian plate is creeping southwest toward the Aegean Sea and the Mediterranean. Moreover, the fault line coincides with the South Aegean volcanic arc, which formed due to the collision of the African and Eurasian plates. This means 3 gigantic forces converge here simultaneously, each pulling the Earth in its own direction. Seismologist Sakir Ersoy voiced an even more alarming hypothesis. Since the epicenters of previous earthquakes didn't coincide with the main North Anatolian fault, there's a possibility that they might have volcanic origins. And that's a completely different story. Such earthquakes can occur hundreds, even thousands of times, and continue for months. True, their magnitude usually doesn't exceed 7, but when there are thousands of such tremors, the consequences can be disastrous. Let's look at what other scientists think. Russian seismologist Alexander Jagalin drew a parallel that many will find frightening. He compared the current situation in Turkey with the Fukushima earthquake, which in March 2011 led to the destruction of the nuclear power plant. He explains it like this: there are short earthquakes that strike, and that's it. The tension is released, and there are those that simply cannot calm down. In Turkey right now, it's exactly this situation. There have been very serious movements of tectonic plates, and this will continue for quite a long time with a certain periodicity. For example, after the Fukushima disaster, scientists recorded underground tremors in the region until November, which is 8 months. According to Jagalin's forecast, in Turkey, the probability of repeated earthquakes will persist for at least a month and a half, and possibly longer. The specialist emphasized a key point. The situation that led to the initial earthquake hasn't calmed down. Turkey has a very complex junction where several plates have converged, and each one rotates in its own way, along its own trajectory. On November 10th at night, in the same Balıkesir region, two more strong earthquakes occurred in succession. First, a tremor with a magnitude of 4.5, and in the morning, a new tremor of approximately the same strength. Both times, the epicenter was in the same location. After this, scientists registered aftershocks with intensities up to 4. Local authorities urged citizens to be cautious. It sounds mild, almost mundane, but behind this phrase lies a harsh reality. Nobody knows exactly when the next tremor will strike. The year 2025 in general began with a series of major earthquakes, and seismic processes in Turkey have shown that everything is only gaining momentum. Eyewitnesses filmed the earthquake in Istanbul. Let me remind you, this is a city with a population of more than 15 million people, a megacity standing just a few kilometers from the active branch of the North Anatolian Fault. Imagine the scale of the catastrophe if a strong tremor hits Istanbul. Scientists warn that the probability of a new earthquake in Turkey within a month is very high. The Earth hasn't calmed down. The tectonic tension hasn't gone anywhere. It has simply redistributed. Here it's worth remembering history. Since 1939, since the tragic Erzincan earthquake, 7 earthquakes with magnitudes greater than 7 on the Richter scale have occurred along the North Anatolian Fault. And here's what's interesting. Each subsequent tremor shifted westward. This is not a coincidence, but a pattern that seismologists have tracked. By analyzing the tension after each earthquake, scientists managed to forecast the earthquake in August 1999 in Izmit, and they were correct. Now they say the next tremor will occur even further west, possibly in a densely populated area near Istanbul, or perhaps in Istanbul itself. In fact, what's happening there now could become the trigger for events that will affect all of Europe. And this is where a person enters the game whose name makes some roll their eyes and others seriously think. Dutch scientist Frank Hugerbeets. This researcher became famous for predicting the devastating earthquake in Turkey in February 2023. Back then, many dismissed his forecast, saying his methodology was nonsense. And then the blow struck that destroyed entire cities. Now Hugerbeets has made a new forecast, and it's not encouraging. He believes that in the near future, a new powerful earthquake could occur in Europe. 3 countries are immediately at risk: Greece, Turkey, and oddly enough, Italy. Hugerbeets explains the geological situation in simple terms. We're dealing with a whole cluster of tectonic plates. In the north, the Eurasian plate, massive and relatively stable. In the south, the African plate, which is moving northward. In the southeast, the Arabian plate, which also isn't standing still. And between them, the Anatolian plate and the Aegean Sea plate are squeezed, located between Turkey and Greece. And this Arabian plate is pushing against the Anatolian one. We already saw the result of this dynamic 2 years ago when those catastrophic Turkish earthquakes occurred. But the process hasn't stopped. On the contrary, the activity is only increasing. Right now, it's especially restless in the Aegean Sea and nearby regions. Hugerbeets assessed seismic activity over the past century and identified zones where things could be truly dangerous in the near future. According to him, we can expect strong earthquakes in Turkey. We've already understood this, but also in Greece and even in Italy, it's quite possible that in the short term, an even stronger earthquake will occur. And here's an interesting point. Hugerbeets doesn't rule out that the next powerful strike might occur not on the Aegean Sea plate, as many expect, but in southern Italy, and it could be devastating. Why Italy? It's simple. Italy hasn't had strong earthquakes in a long time. This means that tectonic tension has accumulated. Plus, scientists recently detected an atmospheric anomaly there in the region between Turkey and Greece. Scientists noticed strange changes in the atmosphere over this area, changes in temperature, humidity, and electromagnetic background. And literally after this, seismic activity sharply increased. You can look at what's happening right now in Greece. The country is shaking. Earthquakes occur there almost every 10 minutes. Greek seismologists don't rule out the possibility of a stronger earthquake and urge the population to remain vigilant. The Prime Minister of Greece stated that in the future, the region will have to cope with a very serious geological phenomenon. Such frequency of underground tremors really could indicate the approach of a potentially catastrophic earthquake and possibly even a tsunami. Now let's look at the situation more broadly. Turkey is located in one of the most seismically active regions on the planet. We've already understood this. The main danger zone is the North Anatolian Fault. This is a gigantic crack in the Earth's crust, stretching more than 1,200 kilometers from the Sea of Marmara to Turkey's eastern borders. Imagine a scar on the planet more than 1,000 kilometers long, along which the Earth's crust is slowly splitting apart. This is the boundary between the Anatolian Plate, which is moving westward, and the Eurasian Plate, which is standing still. And along this line, over the past 100 years, an entire chain of powerful earthquakes has occurred. What's most terrifying is that they're gradually shifting westward, toward the densely populated region of Istanbul. The earthquake in February 2023 in southeastern Turkey became one of the strongest in the country's entire history. But seismologists warn that this event didn't fully release the tension. Part of the energy simply redistributed to neighboring sections of the fault, including the areas of the Sea of Marmara and the Aegean Sea. According to geophysicists' calculations, a significant amount of tectonic energy has accumulated here, which could be released in the coming years or perhaps even sooner. That's exactly why forecasts about the possibility of a new strong earthquake that could affect not only Turkey, but also adjacent regions of Europe are heard more and more often. If a strong tremor occurs in the Sea of Marmara area or northwestern Turkey, Istanbul will face the main danger. But the consequences won't be limited to just this city, and not even just to Turkey. People could feel seismic waves in Bulgaria, Greece, Romania, and even in southern regions of Italy. Depending on the depth of the focus and the direction of wave propagation, destructive vibrations are possible throughout the entire Balkan Peninsula. Yes, history repeats itself. Only now these coasts are home to many times more people than a century ago. For Europe, such tremors carry not only possible physical destruction, but also enormous infrastructure risks. The most important transport routes, energy hubs, and underwater communications connecting Turkey and the Balkans are located in the zone of possible impact. Just think about it. In the event of a powerful earthquake in the Sea of Marmara area, oil and gas terminals and seaports through which energy supplies pass to southern Europe could be damaged. In addition, power system disruptions are possible, especially if underwater cables and pipelines in the Aegean region are affected. Turkey's seismic activation could also affect the tectonic balance of the entire eastern Mediterranean. The movement of the Anatolian Plate exerts pressure not only northward, but also westward toward Greece. That's exactly why every major activation on Turkish territory is often accompanied by increased activity in the Aegean Sea and in the area of the Greek islands of Rhodes, Crete, and Santorini. And Santorini is actually the remnant of a gigantic volcano that exploded a very long time ago. The explosion was so powerful that it destroyed the Minoan civilization on Crete. And this volcano is still active. A strong earthquake in Turkey is capable of triggering an entire cascade of geophysical processes that will affect all of Europe. For example, changes in underground hydrothermal flows could influence the seismic condition of the Balkans. And there's already a network of small but active faults there. Increased activity in the Carpathian region is also possible, where the dangerous Vrancea zone in Romania is located. This is a source of deep earthquakes that in the past were felt throughout Eastern Europe, from Poland to Ukraine. It turns out that a powerful event in Turkey could become a kind of trigger capable of awakening neighboring tectonic systems. From the perspective of long-term consequences, Europe could face an increase in seismic instability along the entire Mediterranean belt from Crete to southern Italy. This region has historically been subject to tectonic movements related to the movement of the African plate, which is advancing northward under Eurasia. Turkish earthquakes are simply part of this global process. And although the direct threat of large-scale destruction to continental Europe is not so terrible, the economic and humanitarian consequences could be colossal. For example, a wave of migration. Millions of refugees will pour from destroyed areas into Europe. These are realistic forecasts in the event of a catastrophic earthquake off the coast of Turkey. Specialists are already calculating scenarios for the development of events and trying to prepare response plans. Turkey remains the key seismic junction between Asia and Europe. Any major earthquake within its borders is not a local event. It's a regional tectonic process capable of affecting tens of millions of people. Europe won't be the epicenter of the catastrophe, but it will definitely feel the reverberations. In this sense, the Eastern Mediterranean today can be viewed as one of the most important indicators of the tectonic state of the entire Eurasian continent. That's all. If you found this interesting, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. This will really help the development of our project.